squeezing all the knowledge he has, all the exposure. We did talk long last year about organizing a 7 series of Faruqi talk, but due to time constraint, due to some other matters, we could not have it. But Alhamdulillah, tonight, all the knowledge he has, all the exposure.
Sorry.
We did talk.
Okay.
Prof. Okay. Alhamdulillah, tonight, finally, we have our first session with my beloved professor, Prof. Imtiyaz, to talk about a very great man in our modern history. And there is no other suitable person to talk about him other than Prof. Imtiyaz, as we have shared with everyone his profile. Prof has wrote at least 4 articles, maybe more actually, but the one that we share is only 4 about Prof. Faruqi. Prof. Imtiyaz now is at ISTAC, is the head of Islamization unit, and also he's a professor of Islam and Buddhism. Prof, we have before we invite you to talk about our dear professor, we have one small 2-minute video from YouTube that we can find about our Sheikh Al-Faruqi. If Sister Aina can play it just for a while, just a teaser before we invite Prof. Imtiyaz to talk about it. Sister Aina can play it. Please wait for 1 minute. Oh, I didn't see 3 minutes. Okay, then maybe our sister has a problem to play the video maybe at the end. You can find in the YouTube, just type Al-Faruqi. There will be a 2-minute video when he talk about Islam and science. This is, I think I have been searching about Faruqi in the YouTube. This is the only one we can find. So his voice, his intensity when talking about something this close to his heart. So inshallah, tonight we have his student to talk about him. And without further ado, we have 1 hour with Prof. Imtiyaz, and then we have another half an hour question and answer. Due to a large number of audience, we do not allow live question, but please state your question in our chat box, and Prof will select, and I also will select, and Prof will answer the most relevant question related to our topic. So without further ado, we present to you our dear Professor Imtiyaz Yusuf to present on Al-Faruqi.
Assalamu alaikum, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
Okay, and then I will begin. Can you see my screen?
Sorry. Coming, Prof. Okay, got it.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you to IIIT Southeast Asia and IIIT in USA and UK and around the world for inviting me to talk about Professor Ismail al Faruqi. Thank you for the presence of everyone here. I see Brother Fatih Al-Malkawi here, usual attendant participant, and Brother Aslam Hanif and several other friends whom I know for many years. And so this is an opportunity. Sometimes we are, it is our taqdeer that we are selected by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be a student of some great scholar. But just like is his tradition in Islamic heritage, we are known by our teachers. Anybody asks me, who am I? I say, I'm a student of Professor Ismail al Faruqi because I was his last student assistant. So and the topic today is multifaceted scholar, because he has many dimensions which people don't know. So again, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, As-salatu was-salam ala khatam al-nabiyyin wal-mursaleen. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. And think not of those who are killed in Allah's way as dead. No, they are alive and are provided sustenance from their Lord. This ayat from Quran and Surah Al-Imran is very important, and I feel it very, very live, because I was the last student assistant of Professor Ismail al Faruqi, and it so happens that I have been selected, or my way that I have been working on him and writing about him. Many people are not writing about him as much as I do. And when I write, sometimes I feel him nudging me, he's alive, telling me, put this, put that, put that. So I do feel that presence. So I'm sure, because as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they are not dead, they are alive. So I first, when I was in Thailand for the last 30 years, I was always thinking, and I was very disturbed, that for 26 years of the death of Professor Ismail al Faruqi, no fellowship was ever published in his honor. We have fellowship in honor of many, many scholars, but nobody did that for Faruqi, Professor Ismail al Faruqi. So in 2010 and 11, when I was at the Georgetown University, and I presented this idea to Professor John Esposito, who was the first PhD student of Professor Ismail al Faruqi, and to Dr. Jamal al-Barzanji. And they were interested in it. And I said the reason that I feel that we should publish a fellowship. Professor John Esposito said, no, I have no time. I said, I have all the time, I will do it. So Alhamdulillah, in 2012, we came up with a fellowship in honor of Professor Ismail al Faruqi, titled Islam and Knowledge, Al-Faruqi's Concept of Religion in Islamic Thought, which is published by IB Tauris. And while I was during that period when I was in Georgetown University as a visiting professor, I was given access to the whole library of Professor Ismail al Faruqi. And I used to sit hours together, go through all his documents from 1960 to 1986. And I came across one manuscript, which I said, I've not seen this published. So he had published one book titled Islam with Professor Denny. And I asked Professor Denny, does his book is similar to the book the manuscript which I have found? And we exchanged notes, and we saw that no, it is not. So it was unpublished. And so I talked to Brother Jamal, and he said, yes, we will publish it. And so this manuscript was published in 2012, I believe. It is very interesting about this book that I had to update a lot of information in that, because it was dated information. There were figures, there were numbers which had to be changed, and it took some time, but it is a very nice book for introduction to Islam. If you look at the content, the part 1 talks about who is a Muslim, part 2 talks about moments of Muslim religious life, part 3 talks about other Muslim celebrations, part 4, the Muslim family, part 5, Muslim worker, part 6, the Islamic world order, and part 7, Islamic culture and history. So besides this, I found many other, around 50 manuscripts, which are still not published, unpublished papers of Professor Ismail al Faruqi, which have to be published in one way or the other. So he is a great scholar to talk about it. 1 hour is too less. And for me, when I was doing all this research, I said, one lifetime is not enough for doing this work. And at the same time, my brother, Dr. Jamal al-Barzanji said, we want to dedicate a special volume of the American Journal of Islamic Social Sciences, which Professor Ismail al Faruqi founded, as a special commemorative issue on Professor Ismail al Faruqi. And he asked me and Professor John Esposito to edit this. And this was edited. It was published in 2011. And People who contributed were Professor John Wall, Professor Muhammad Najatullah Siddiqui, Professor Kamal Hassan, the former rector of IIUM, Dr. Ibrahim Muhammad Zain, who was at IIUM and now in Qatar, Professor Muhammad Aslam Hanif, who is here. I was very grateful that I approached him and he immediately agreed to write an article. And Charles Fletcher. Charles Fletcher is a Canadian who wrote a book on Professor Ismail al Faruqi, Christian-Muslim Dialogue, and Dr. Zaki Kirmani from India. After that, I've published several articles on him, Professor Ismail al Faruqi, and then in 2021, I was approached by Brother Yaqub Mirza and the Center for Contemporary Islam and Contemporary World at Shenandoah University to come up with a text which would be the essential writings of Ismail al Faruqi. And I'm showing the cover here. It is available for free download at the website of the Center for Islam in Contemporary World. And it is a collection of most important parts of his works. It has, and some professors have told me that they are using it as a textbook. So Alhamdulillah. So Professor Faruqi, now today I was counting 36 years have passed away since he passed away, but he is still alive. The whole world is interested in him. And right around here today, I think there are about 70, 80 people joining us, and especially the young generation should know what was Professor Ismail al Faruqi all about. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. My presentation is going to be I'll talk about his biography and academic career, and his contribution as an intellectual mujahid, scholar, activist. The word mujahid, intellectual mujahid, I use it because when I was publishing the Fashrif, I had written the introduction that he is a mujtahid, and Professor John Esposito told me, no, you change the title. He is a mujahid, he's an intellectual mujahid. So can imagine how Professor John Esposito is so much devoted and dedicated to his teacher. So I use the term intellectual mujahid. I will discuss, there are many topics which I cannot cover, but I'll cover only a few of them. And these are his view on pre-Hijra Islam and the Islamic worldview, Ummatic methodology. The word Ummatic was coined by Professor Ismail al Faruqi. Contemporary challenges to Islamization of Knowledge project. These are my thoughts, which I will discuss here, and interreligious dialogue. So, Professor Faruqi was born in 1921. He is a Palestinian Islamic scholar, writer, and activist, and he was a governor of Jalili from 1945 to 48, and professor of Islamics, not Islamic studies. He coined the term Islamics at Temple University. He was a walking encyclopedia. His encyclopedic knowledge is like a mine to be researched, learned, and applied. He was no ordinary or a mediocre scholar. His work focuses mostly on a comprehensive vision of Islam and its relationship with culture. And he presented Islam as a religion of reason, science, progress, emphasizing on action, and combined it with on the basis of Tawheed, God's oneness, with modernist approach and application of Islam to modern life through the exercise of intellectual jihad. And he established Islamic studies programs in many countries, even IIUM, all the IIUMs around, IIUs around the world, and I'll come to that, and professional associations, Muslim students associations, and participated in international interreligious dialogues. So as I said, he was born in 21 in Jaffa, in an influential family. Again, as I mentioned this, I'm taking this information here. The Encyclopedia of Islam, which is published by E.J. Brill, which is considered to be the most important source of Islamic studies. You must be familiar with me. They contacted me 2 years ago to write an entry for Professor Ismail al Faruqi. And I said, my God, and to write for such a great publication was an honor. And I wrote that. So some of information which is here, that article will be coming online soon. And he obtained his bachelor's degree from University of Beirut in 1942. And after that, he was appointed as a registrar of cooperative societies in the British Mandate of Jerusalem after the Second World War. In 1945, he was appointed as the district governor of Jalili. And in 1948, with the creation of Israel, he migrated to Beirut. He stayed there for some time, and he moved to the United States. He went to Indiana University, got his master's degree in philosophy. In 1951, he earned his second master's degree in philosophy from Harvard University. And in 1952, he went back to Indiana University and got his PhD in philosophy department, and it is titled Justifying the Good, Metaphysics and Epistemology of Value. After getting his doctorate, he was unemployed, and he worked as a renovator of old houses. He used to go and renovate, refurbish old houses, paint them, do the carpentry work. And so as an unemployed PhD per scholar, can imagine, how humble he is. He used to tell us about his story, and he worked for several years until he was appointed in 1949. After that, in 1954, after getting his PhD and being unemployed, he went to Al-Azhar, spent 4 years there in Cairo to further his knowledge about traditional understanding of Islam. 59 to 61, he went to McGill Institute of Islamic Studies, where he studied Christianity and Judaism in the Faculty of Divinity. At McGill, he met Professor Fazlur Rahman, who was teaching there. And it is interesting, they became friends. I have seen letters between them, and they shared a common mission. They discussed about how to raise the level of Islamic studies in the Muslim world. Professor Faruqi was a trailblazer of Islamic studies in the modern age. In 1970 onwards, there are three important scholars of Islamic studies in the West. One is Professor Ismail al Faruqi, second is Professor Fazlur Rahman, and the third is Professor Said Hussain Nasr. So if you see the contribution of Professor Fazlur Rahman is in the area of Islamic thought and philosophy, Professor Said Hussain Nasr in the area of Persian Sufism and perennialism, and Professor Ismail al Faruqi in the study of Islam in the areas of phenomenology and history of religion. He is the important scholar of phenomenology and history of religion in the modern age. I don't see any other Muslim scholar who has entered this field. When he was at McGill, Professor Fazlur Rahman and Professor Faruqi were invited by the famous Pakistani historian, Professor Qureshi, to come and join the center of our Institute of Islamic Research in Karachi, Pakistan. And from 1961 to 63, he went there and he wrote the curriculum, which are there. I have those copies and syllabuses for how to teach Islamic studies. And his goal was teaching and researching Islam in modern age. But he got upset and sad in Pakistan, seeing the state that the people were lethargic. They were just spending their time drinking chai, and were not concerned about the ummah, for which the creation of Pakistan was the purpose. So he returned to the United States. And in 1964, he became the associate professor of Islamic studies at Syracuse University. In 1968, he was the first professor to be appointed for Islamic studies or Islamics at the new department which was established, Department of Religion at Temple University, from which I, Brother Shahran, and several others have graduated from. Brother Muhammad Nur Manuti, and I cannot call all the names here, Professor Anis Ahmad and Professor Ibrahim Zain and several others. So we were all attracted to him to go and study with him. In 64, he became, this is a repeat. So his contributions are in combining academic study of Islam with the study of Christianity, history and phenomenology of religion, though he's very well known for is more famously known for Islamization of knowledge. He was a scholar activist, and he studied the contribution of Islam to the world of knowledge and global civilization. when I was doing my master's at Aligarh Muslim University, I finished my master's, and I did not know what to do next. So somebody asked me, "What is your next project?" I said, "I don't know." So he said to me, that is Dr. Imtiyaz Ali, who is here at IIUM. He said, "Write to Professor Ismail al Faruqi." So I wrote to Professor Ismail al Faruqi a handwritten letter saying that I stood first in the university, in the department, and he said, I said to him, "I want to study more, but I have no money." So he wrote a letter back to me. I was shocked, that as a great scholar writing back, replying. He said, "I will do something for you." And Alhamdulillah, he invited me, gave me scholarship, wrote a letter, and gave me scholarship from IIIT. I was among the first 3 students to receive IIIT scholarship when it was established. Person from his home, it used to operate. The others were Brother Salman Farsi from Nigeria and Brother Bekir Aksoy from Turkey. So 3 of us. And today our IIIT has grown into a global organization. So I marked these 13 areas of his contribution, his original native contribution. Uruba, by the word Uruba, I don't mean Arab nationalism, I mean monotheistic Arabism. Pre-Hijra Islam, I'll talk about it, religion and geography, very important section, part of his research, which is seen in the title of his books. The first book is The Historical Atlas of World Religions. The second is The Cultural Atlas of Islam, Quranic Exegesis, Mu'tazili Thought, Christian Ethics, Muslim-Christian Dialogue, Science and Traditional Values, Islam and Art, Essence of Religious Experience, Islam and Culture, Islam and Human Rights, and Meta-Religion, which is his last paper, which was published after his death. So in the field of history of religion, he talks about pre-Hijra Islam. He offered a very interesting perspective on how study of religion, Muslims should study religion from the historical critical research of the ancient Near Eastern texts and Muslim sources. He saw the struggle. The history of religion in the Middle East or the Arabian theater is between monotheism and polytheism, Tawheed and Shirk. And this theme is constantly there before Islam and pre-Hijra Islam until the coming of Quran to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So for Professor Faruqi, a Muslim, the monotheist, is a monotheic person. Means a person whose ethical vision is rooted in the Quranic view of deen, based on the principle of monotheism, universalism, tolerance, and life affirmation. And he contrasts a monotheic worldview with the mythopoeic worldview, religious worldview of the polytheistic people. Polytheistic means those who do shirk, because they are not able to transcend to the abstracted idea of monotheism. So monotheic and mythopoeic, there is monotheist and the polytheist are religious worldviews which are found in struggle, in conflict in the Middle East. I have to remind our listeners here that you cannot apply this freely to Hinduism, which is henotheistic, or Buddhism, which is non-theistic, or the spirit religions of Africa, China, and Japan. So we have to study every religion in its own theater, in its own context, and then we can engage into interreligious dialogue. So basically, what Professor Faruqi is saying, that don't throw around terms or terms and without engaging in the study of those religions. Like he was, for me, the Al-Biruni of the modern age. So for Professor Faruqi, mere claiming Islam is the first and last religion to be revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without collaborating it with facts from the study of pre-Hijra Islam means reading the text of the ancient Near East from Mesopotamia, of the Akkadians who lived in Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, about reading the religious texts of Gilgamesh, Enuma Elish, the deluge or the flood of Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, Egypt, Persia, Hebrews, we cannot understand, have a comprehensive understanding of Islam. Now, when we used to, we studied this, let me show. We studied, these were our two textbooks. And, we as students were saying, oh, what is Professor Faruqi teaching us? Read about Enkidu and Marduk and Enuma Elish and Gilgamesh. We wanted to study Islam with us. He said, no, you have to study Islam from, not from just beginning of the Quran, till the end of the Khatam and of Nabuwa with Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but you have to go back into the past and see the parallels and see the history, and then you can collaborate with facts your position. So he basically, I remember telling us in one of the class that you have to work very, very hard. And these are the two texts which are available. I would recommend people to look at them and see this, what writings are there. So for him, the combination, he was a scholar who was a philosopher and a historian of religion with a Muslim perspective. For him, the study and research of religion was not a detached inquiry, but a critical engagement about the place of religion in human history. And he debated with the Christians and others on the Quranic concept of Deen al-Fitra, or what he would call in English as a religio naturalis. He held that Deen al-Fitra is rooted in the Quranic teaching, as we all know, and has been sent to all the prophets who spoke in their own language, bilisanihi. And it is authenticated finally in the Quran, which comes to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he called upon Muslims not to be just satisfied with understanding Islam as beginning and ending with the prophetic career of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but to engage in studying and conducting research about Islam, pre-Hijrah Islam. We say Islam is the first religion from Adam alayhi salam, but we are not able to give facts and collaborate it with facts. And that, in his view, is the first step towards building interreligious tolerance and dialogue. So again, for talking about pre-Hijrah Islam, so he used the word that Islam is a religion in his early writings, and in his final writings and in his other books, he goes on to replace the term religion or original religion, deen, with meta-religion. That means Islam is a meta-religion, religion above religion, where you look at Islam in a panoramic view of Islam. Really, it is such a universal view. And when he used to teach, he was an encyclopedia. You could ask him anything and he would answer it. So meta-religion means not the Islam of our ethnicity, Islam of our nationality, or of our language or our culture, but above our general understanding of Islam or our cultural understanding of Islam, looking at it from a global perspective, as I said, from a panoramic view. So for him, the worldview of Islam is made up of three components. First, ideational. It highlights the centrality of Tawhid as the core idea of Arab consciousness, in contrast to other civilizations. Second, it is axiological. That means valuational adherence to Islam, faithfulness to the values of monotheistic Tawhid, piety, taqwa, ethics, world affirmation. It is not national, racial, or ideological. Because if you understand Islam in these terms, racial, national, ideological, you descend into fanaticism. And the third part of which he and his wife, Professor Ismail al Faruqi, contributed to is the aesthetical dimension of Islam. Quran as an aesthetical revelation, evident from its characteristics of its language, Arabic language, and expressions in Muslim literature, calligraphy, architecture, music, and painting. For Professor al-Faruqi, the theological, moral, and aesthetical dimension of Muslim life, thought, and actions are infused with consciousness based on duality between the creator, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the creature, the Adam. So this duality is the core of Islamic worldview. And then how to approach studying Islam in this way. He proposes what I call as ummatic methodology. Our orientation in the study and contribution to the knowledge to the world of knowledge should be ummatic in orientation, a collective undertaking that includes the ulama, the academic scholars, students, and even bankers and lawyers. That's why Islamization of knowledge is a ummatic project and is a broader project. It's not a one-man show, uh, but it is a combined effort. He invited everyone. This is his generosity, magnanimity. He asked everyone from all Muslims, because that was the period of the crisis of Muslim education. I will come to that in a minute. Come and join me in the project of Islamization of knowledge as a collective need to address the post-colonial crisis of Muslim education. He invited Professor Akbar Ahmad, he invited Professor, so everyone, several to come, an expert from anthropology to contribute to anthropology. Professor Fatih al-Malkawi from psychology, Professor Malik Badri, and you name it, Professor Anis Ahmad, Professor Khurshid Ahmad. So it is a collective process and a collective project. So his students, Muslims and non-Muslims, some are like Christians and Sikh, he treated them without discrimination, making them realize that what are the pedagogical, intellectual problems facing the Muslim Ummah. He treated us, we used to call him, in our private conversation, we used to call him Baba, because he used to invite us to his home and have dinners and all that. Sometimes fight with me and argue with me, and then come back and then hug me and say, let's go for lunch or let's go for dinner. He was kind of a scholar. This is the kind of a scholar who was a friend and a teacher at the same time. He was a hard taskmaster too. When I wrote my first paper, he said to me, Imtiyaz, your paper goes out of my window. His office was on the 6th floor. So he said, goes out of my window. I said, I worked hard. He said, no, you have to rewrite the paper. Today, our students don't want to rewrite the paper. So very hard work. And another thing which he said to us all, that when we write our paper, don't just quote the Quran. He said, don't hide behind the ayats of the Quran. Say what you want to say. That will be the production and contribution to knowledge. And then give a reference to certain surah, certain ayat in the Quran. What we do is that we put the ayat and we hide behind it. So he was, as a philosopher, he was like saying, go before the text, don't go behind the text. I'll talk more about it later. So his approach is based on Tawheed, which we very well know, very all know. And he was critical of Sufism and as the reason for the stagnation and the corruption of Muslim societies. Not Quranic Sufism, not Tawheedic Sufism, but the popular Sufism which we see around, and cultural Sufism, where the Sheikh and Murid, the relationship is that of a master and a disciple. The disciple cannot say anything or question anything to the master. And he was captivated with the Mu'tazili thought of Al-Nazam, Qadi al-Jabbar, Ikhwan al-Safa, and also, interestingly, combined with the theology or Tawheedic theology of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab. And at the same time, he was a phenomenologist and a modern historian of religion and social sciences. He was a polymath, and I struggle, and I think every one of us struggle. He combines Mu'tazilism and Tawheed and modernism. I don't know how he did it. How did he do it? I'm still struggling with this critical question. And it comes out in his writings. So he was able to address these three parts: rationalism and the challenges of the modern age for Islam, and the Tawheed, the Muwahhidun theology of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahab. We'll come to that again if you have any questions. So he wrote in English, and he viewed Islam as an Arab. This is very important. We have to understand Islam from the perspective of Arab consciousness without being an Arab nationalist. He talked about Islam based on Uruba. When he used the word Uruba, many of the people until today say, oh, he was an Arab nationalist. I say no, because they don't see him from the perspective of a phenomenologist and a historian of religion. So in his understanding of Uruba is based in phenomenology and history of religion, not in the Arab nationalism of Nasser or Hafiz al-Assad or Gaddafi or whatever you have. For him, the word Arab means the inhabitants of those who lived in the Arabian theater. And he did not like the word Semites because he sees it as an invention by the biblical scholars, European biblical scholars. So the Arab theater from Mesopotamia, including Syria, Palestine, and peninsular Arabia, is a theater of Tawheed and Shirk. So that is his perspective. And we have to understand Islam in that Arab consciousness. Again, when we used to use the word Uruba, we used to get very frustrated. And then he clarified that he's not using it as an Arab nationalist, but as Arab religious consciousness, as an Arab religious consciousness. And he goes on, for him, Tawheed or monotheistic Arabism is the essence of the traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And they make up the Arab stream of being. He saw Arabism as the source of Muslim civilization, comprising of two categories, Arab al-Ariba and the Mustarab, or Al-Arab al-Mustarab. And Tawheed as the greatest gift of Arab religious consciousness to humanity. So Tawheed, the religious concept of Tawheed could only emerge in Arabia. It could not emerge, and it did not emerge in other geographical parts of the world, say among the Indians of America or in India or here in Southeast Asia or any other part of the world. So we have to recognize. So when we read the Quran, when we do the Salat, when we practice Islam, we have to have this concept of Tawheed as in its purity of monotheism without any attachment of shirk to it. So Tawheed is the greatest gift of the Arab stream of consciousness to humanity, which exists in Christianity and Judaism, but is corrupted. So for him, Uruba is an integral part of Arab consciousness based on the monotheistic view of religion. Professor Faruqi stresses on Tawheed, again, as I said before, as Arab consciousness, and he was often criticized as an Arab nationalist, as I mentioned to you, and some Jewish and Christian scholars in America also criticized him, saying that, oh, you're Arabizing Christianity and you're Arabizing Judaism. And he was able to answer to them. So according to him, all Arabs, rather all inhabitants of the Middle East, have carried the divine message of monotheism since antiquity until today. So in the field of Islamic thought, when I look him as when I go to look his contribution as an intellectual mujahid, he stresses on themes of adl, of tawheed and adl, and the topics where these topics are very important for him as a displaced Palestinian Muslim. And in the history and the area of history and phenomenology of religion, he offered a Muslim perspective on religion, Muslim approach, Islamic approach towards contemporary study of religion, which is historical critical. And he was very much impressed with the works of Al-Biruni, Ibn Hazm, Ash-Shahrastani, and Ibn Taymiyyah. Al-Faruqi was the foremost modern Muslim phenomenologist of religion, following in the steps of, as I said, Al-Biruni and Ibn Hazm. And he discussed this in his book, in a small booklet, which is titled Kitab al-Tawheed. Now let's come to talk about Islamization of knowledge. He advocated the adoption of Islamic worldview by Muslims residing in their homelands as an intellectual and a practical engagement with Western modernity, because we are modern by the accident of colonialism, from the experiential advantage, from the viewpoint of experiential advantage, and need for educational reform in the Muslim world. Because he had seen that there was a crisis going on, in intellectual crisis in Muslim education. And I and people of my generation, and also Professor Fatih al-Malkawi and others, we had seen that Islam was removed from the curriculum. The younger generation today, you are lucky, you have the benefit of Islamization of knowledge project. we had seen the crisis. Let me just share what would happen to me. I was doing my BA in political science, and whenever I used to go to a bookshop, the first thing I would do, pick up a book and open the index and look for the word Islam. And I didn't find it in any of the books of philosophy, sociology, psychology, whatever were being published. So he called for the first World Conference on Muslim Education in Makkah in 1977, where many scholars joined, Professor Abdul Amin Abu Sulaiman, Professor Taha Jabir al-Alwani, and several others, including Professor Kamal Hassan. He was a young person at that time. I have the list. So when you look at the book, at the 1982 version book of Islamization of Knowledge, at the end, there's the list of the people who participated in that conference. So the first World Conference of Muslim Education, the Makkah Conference, was directed towards reforming the educational system in Muslim countries. That is curricular reform and faculty development, and designing of research programs in universities sponsored by the OIC in Pakistan, first in Pakistan, Malaysia, and then later on in Bangladesh, Niger, and Uganda. For Professor Al-Faruqi played also a central role in the establishment of the International Institute of Islamic Thought in Herndon, which was established in 1981, but it first operated from his home in Wincott in Pennsylvania. The objectives of IIIT, as I read him, are the revival and reform of Islamic thought through Islamization of knowledge projects, which after his deaths have changed. I am a Faruqian, so let me say something very, very frankly, which have changed later on with the terms being used of Maqasid al-Sharia during the time of Dr. Taha Jabir al-Alwani, and now the term is being used as integration of knowledge. Though Professor Fatih al-Malkawi once said to me, it all means the same thing. But I see these three phases of the Islamization of project at IIIT and around the world. So in the area of education, he held that it is necessary to construct a system of knowledge which is consistent with the Islamic doctrines, because the Ummah is in a state of sickness of secularism, Westernization, and is de-Islamized. It is in a state of crisis. A very important principle of Islamization of knowledge, which is often not looked at and not seen and not emphasized, is one term which he uses: master the disciplines. Master the disciplines means if you are studying a sociology, psychology, natural sciences, you should know the state of art of knowledge in that field. So, and then make your contribution to the theory and method in the world of knowledge. This has been seen as a very difficult task. It is a difficult task. You want to be the master of the discipline in which you are working, and it has been abandoned, and people don't talk about mastering the discipline. And he distinguished between data and theory. We have a lot of data, but we don't have theories. What the Westerners do, they come to the Muslim countries as anthropologists or whatever, sociologists, they collect the data, go to the West and produce theories as summer scholars. So for him, he says that it's easy to borrow and criticize and talk of conspiracies, but hard to develop alternative sound scientific theories based on Islamization of knowledge. So this lacking was an important concern for him, along with Professor Sayyid Naqib al-Attas, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, Dr. Taha Jabir, Muhammad Kamal Hassan, and Professor Fatih al-Malkawi, he drew them all together to build the educational movement of Islamization of knowledge. While the project of Islamization of knowledge began in the post-colonial era of the crisis of Muslim education, its contribution continues to face new theoretical and methodological challenges today in the 21st century. It has to be a continuing and ongoing dynamic process, which has to be stabilized and consolidated, and not to be tinkered continuously. This is a very important point. Don't tinker with knowledge, because once you do that, you lose mission, objective, and goals. So Islamization of knowledge is, as he as Sardar Ibn Ziauddin Sardar's had disagreements with him a lot on this issue of Islamization of knowledge. And Professor Faruqi told him Islamization of knowledge does not mean reinventing the wheel, because Islam as a civilization always took from the past and developed it further. And in other words, we today, for example, today there is this the tire of the jumbo of the Airbus, the latest technology. Islamization of knowledge is how can we make those wheels of airplanes more compatible with the needs of humanity and not destruction of the environment and others. So when he's basically saying that we, just like in the past, our great scholars took from the Greeks and the Indians and the Persians and the Chinese and continued and made their own original contributions, we should be doing the same. So it is a dynamic, ongoing process. Times and ideas change, but we have to be dynamic. So, for example, Islamization of knowledge project began, as I said, in the materialist age, the age of positivism, positivist approach to knowledge. But time and knowledge have now, in terms of time and knowledge, now we have entered into the era of postmodernism, artificial intelligence, pandemic, and climate change. So there is a need to engage in developing new intellectual and methodological responses to the challenges which are being faced today since the age of in the eras of postmodernism, artificial intelligence, pandemic, and climate change. So I'm not going to go into this. So we have to criticize and understand what is postmodernism all about. What is the view of Lyotard and Derrida, and respond to them, to their theories of incredulity, of belief, and deconstruction. And also now we have entered into what Fukuyama, the defender of liberalism, calls post-human future and artificial intelligence. There's a book here he has written, Our Post-Human Future, and he says that today human being has acquired ability to manipulate the DNA of all one person's descendants, and which we are entering an era of terrible consequences for our political order. Henry Kissinger also wrote a book on the age of AI, and he, in spite of his whatever his political views, he says that we today everything is controlled by AI. The jets are powered by AI, and online communication is powered by AI or artificial intelligence, searching, streaming, as we are doing now. Everything is transforming. So how does Islamization of knowledge engages with this age of AI and post-human future? So, and the challenge of the pandemic, COVID-19, which has affected us for the last 2-3 years. That's why I'm talking to you through Zoom. And the upcoming 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference, which will take place in November in Egypt. And I was listening to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, and he says, we are at the stage where the question before us, it is life and death struggle now. In other words, the human beings are destroying themselves by destroying nature and environment, khalaqa, the whole creation, or all beings and all creations by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the challenge before Islamization of knowledge as a dynamic process is to address these challenges which are going haywire, taking the whole humanity, and we are going to destroy ourselves because of what we have brought upon ourselves. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says very clearly in the Quran that evil comes from the human being, while the ma'ruf comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So human being is doing evil to themselves. So I'm repeating here that the question is, how, for Islamization of knowledge continuing project, is what are the critical questions which we should address as Khalifa fil Ard, as the representatives or vicegerents of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on earth. Professor Faruqi, as the pioneer of Islamization of knowledge, would have responded, in my view, that Muslims cannot be unmindful of the changes and the challenges which are going around us, because they raise critical challenges of epistemology and ontology of understanding Islamic world. I believe mere ethical, and this is my view, mere ethical or jurisprudential response to the challenges is not enough. We need to undertake hard work, advanced research, which lie at the ground plan, which he mentioned as mastering the disciplines at the ground plan of the Islamization of Knowledge project. So we can be relevant. We can make Islam relevant, Islamic world relevant for the existence of for a fitful existence for our age. So the questions are challenging and are becoming even more and more difficult. So just saying that ethics is the answer, fiqh is the answer is not enough. We need to, our students, our researchers, our teachers, we as teachers, scholars, we have to do hard work to continue and make Islam relevant as a process, as a civilizational process, as a civilizational project, which can help humanity to come out of the challenges which are facing today. Because, and then the other issue, which topic which he was interested in, which he has contributed to, is interreligious dialogue. Now, I'm taking you back to post-war Europe, because post-war Europe was facing religious crisis in 1960s. Christianity at that time was facing the challenges from Eastern religions of Hinduism and Buddhism, secularism, Marxism, feminism, and change of lifestyle. Excuse me. So their 1960s and 70s saw the rise of the interreligious movement. And Professor Faruqi was a Muslim pioneer and an active participant in Muslim-Christian dialogue, and also with the members of other religions, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Chinese religion. He's written works with them, with the Chinese scholars, with the Shintos, with the Japanese scholars, with Jewish scholars, and contributing the Islamic perspective on interreligious dialogue. So because of the crisis which was going on. So interreligious dialogue started in the West. It was started by the Protestant Church, first to promote unity among themselves, and then by the Catholic Church through the Second Vatican Council. And it was for the first time after the Second World War that the Christian Church or Christian Church and Christian denominations of Protestants and the Catholics were for the first time recognizing the presence of other religions, of other religious movement. It marked a movement of from Christian mission to interreligious dialogue. So when those who engage in interreligious dialogue should be aware of what are the objectives behind it. It was the first time that they recognized the presence of other religions. For Professor Faruqi, the prospects of finding common ideas between Muslim-Christian dialogue are limitless, and he was pessimistic about Christian-Muslim dialogue, because the most important document which comes out for interreligious dialogue from the Vatican is the Nostra Aetate document, which talks about the relations between the church and the non-Christian religions. In Professor Al-Faruqi's view, it is not a document which is enough, because it does not go beyond beyond just recognizing, for it does not include Muslims in the Catholic doctrine of salvation. We are excluded. Muslims and the Jews are excluded still by the church. So though they talk about dialogue, so we should be aware that what is their position about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Are they ready to accept Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a Nabi, as a Rasul after Jesus, after Isa alayhi salam? And these are the challenges and the questions. These are hard questions we have to which he used to ask, and they used to have tough time with them. So For Professor Al-Faruqi, dialogue between Christians and Muslims should begin right back in the history at the Council of Nicaea in 324, which recognizes Trinity and divinity of Jesus. He held that Christian belief of justification or salvation by faith alone was insufficient. And he wrote a book titled Christian Ethics. I recommend you to read it. You'll be surprised. One day in a class session, he said that his best book, his magnum opus, his book titled Christian Ethics, not Islamization of Knowledge. He was Al-Biruni of the modern age, as I said before. And a Christian scholar of one of our teachers remarked to me once that Al-Faruqi teaches us our religion. So that means he had studied and understood Christianity from inside out, same with other religions. And this is, he published his book in 1967. The gray cover is the original version. And now we also have it published here in Malaysia by A.S. Nuruddin, which is available here. And if you want, it is available. So I'm trying to conclude here that even today, 36 years after his death, Professor Al-Faruqi has left behind a lasting influence on Muslim minds, educational institutions, their researches in various disciplines. He and his wife, Ruais Lamia Al-Faruqi, were murdered in their home by a person called Yusuf Ali. Let me say something here. I was his last student assistant. And in 1986, I was going for summer, was coming up, and I was going for a holiday to Thailand to visit my family. And normally he used to call me, ask me to prepare before the lecture and all that. But one day he called me and he said to me, Imtiyaz, you're going to Thailand for holiday. So have a nice holiday, and inshallah we'll meet after you come back after the summer vacation. And 15 days after I left USA for the vacation, he was murdered. And then I said to myself, my God, why did he call me at that time and say that goodbye to me? He has never done that ever to me before, whenever I went for a vacation. But in 1986, he was murdered in Ramadan. He called me and said goodbye. So in a way, he has left a lasting influence on my personality and my work and my thinking. He held that Islam was not opposed to modern science and technology, but be it based on past or modern paradigms. What mattered is whether it was axiologically sound in terms of values in the areas of ethics, aesthetics, and religion as they impact our daily life. Professor Faruqi presented Islam as a religion, a worldview, as an integrated part of knowledge process without engaging in apologetics, but by developing new theories about the role of the Arabs and Islam in the religious stream in a non-nationalistic manner. His work, Christian Ethics, Islamic theory of ethics, are rooted in the Quranic monotheism. Same is with the project of Islamization of knowledge, which will continue to live and inspire, and it inspires us today and inshallah till the end of this world. The contemporary era of postmodernism, as I mentioned, artificial intelligence, pandemic, and climate change, have raised critical questions about the future of the Khalifa fil Ard, which Islamization of knowledge is what he would be interested in. So Islamization of knowledge is an ongoing venture, and we cannot be unmindful of the challenges which emerge continuously and have impact on the epistemological and ontological understanding of Islamic worldview. Thank you very much. I stop my presentation here.
Thank you so much, Prof. It is indeed need 7 weeks to unpack everything, Prof. Or even 14 weeks a semester, as you listed down all the areas that Al-Mahum are doing work on it, Alhamdulillah. So before we invite response from our audience, we want to invite Prof. Aslam and Dr. Fathi to say a few words as a vote of thanks to our Prof. Imtiyaz. Prof. Aslam, I think we have unmute you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Brother Shahran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everyone. Firstly, let me just thank Prof. Imtiyaz. I learned a lot from this presentation. I have to admit that my main reading of Marhum Ismail al Faruqi has been on the Islamization of Knowledge agenda. But I think today you've really showed how much he has contributed in so many other areas. And a lot more reading of him is needed. I would again just like to say that in 1986, when the fateful incident occurred, I remember we were also reading some of the issues of ages, and even at that time there were already some critiques or criticisms of Islamization of knowledge. It would have been wonderful if he was around to tell us how he responds to those criticisms. I think we lost a big opportunity. I'm just wondering whether you would have some idea about how he would have responded to some of the criticisms that were written even in that early period. I remember reading Fazlur Rahman also being critical of Islamization of knowledge. Of course, Zia has also written a critique on Islamization of knowledge. It would be nice, if you could share, if you had any, of your own correspondence or your discussions with him, what he thought of those criticisms. So with that, thank you very much again. Wallahu alam.
Thank you, Prof. I think this is a favorite question. The relationship between Fazlur Rahman, Hussein Nasar, and of course, Syed Najib Alatas. Prof, do you want to comment now or want to wait for Dr. Fathi to say a few words? Go ahead, Prof.
Let me comment first to Professor Aslam. Very, very important question. The criticism had already started. I think the answer is what I said. He said, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to improvise upon what is already invented. That means the task of the Khalifa fil Ard is to go beyond what is already presented, has been invented. Means make it perfect. They invent from their worldview, materialist or whatever, how we as Muslims, and you are doing great work in the field of Islamic economics yourself, are contributing to that. So I see your work in that line. Now with Fazlur Rahman, he had a very good friendship actually. But the problem between Fazlur Rahman and Faruqi, Professor Faruqi, was that Professor Fazlur Rahman could not accept the idea of Uruba. He was upset with the idea of Uruba, and he thought Professor Faruqi was stressing upon Arab nationalism. And that's why he criticizes Professor Faruqi on that. But Mark, let me tell you something very interesting. We did a course with Professor Ismail al Faruqi. The title of the course was the Quran. And the main textbook for that course was the book by Professor Fazlur Rahman, Major Themes of the Quran. So he, in spite of their disagreements, he recognized Fazlur Rahman's contribution. He even said that Americans, universities are not treating Fazlur Rahman in the right way. They have put him in the University of Chicago in the Department of Middle Eastern Studies. Actually, he should be in the Department of Divinity, School of Divinity, Chicago University School of Divinity, where he can make his contribution as an Islamic thinker. So he was very, very magnanimous in his view in understanding. Even with Professor Syed Hussein Nasr, when he had fled from Iran to America and was at Temple University, when they used to meet each other, in spite of their differences, he would hug and talk nicely with each other. So that was kind of the relationship. Now he had Zia criticized Faruqi a lot, the Afkar group, you know very well. And I think somebody should do that research, because we don't have that research being done. That how Afkar wants to start everything from scratch. Afkar wants to, and Afkar group had their criticism, and I'm critical of being Zia here. I'm Faruqian, whatever you call it, and And with Ziauddin Sardar's integration of knowledge is not what, in my view, Islamization of knowledge is all about. Maybe you have other view, Professor Fatih Al-Malkawi, you will have a different view. And the issue here is that Zia is not that top-notch level of scholar. I'm sorry for being frank. Top-notch scholar level of a scholar of that of Ismail al Faruqi. So he had many disagreements with Ziauddin Sardar and the Afkar group. That's what I would say here. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. With that feedback. Before I forgot to make a small announcement, inshallah, our next series will be with Prof. Kamal on Yusuf al-Qaradawi, inshallah. Prof. Kamal will make a special presentation as a tribute to our Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi. We will inform about the date. No, not Saturday. Maybe next 3 weeks, early November, inshallah.
Yeah,
so,
I just want to say, the comment. This is the Ijmali group. Ziauddin Sardar, Parvez, Manzoor, and they are the Ijmalis. So, but they publish a magazine called Afkar. So sorry for the misplacing of words. Okay.
Okay, Prof. We have now many questions in our chat box. Would you like to choose it by yourself?
I would like to hear. I'd like to hear Professor Fatih Al-Malkawi before I go to the
Somehow, I think he left.
Oh, he left.
He left. Yeah, he no
okay. So the question is, can there be interreligious dialogue? People come to see called dialogue with preconceived negativity boosted by Islamophobia. You see, the issue, the way dialogue is being done today is, I call it post 9/11 dialogue. It is a fashionable dialogue. It's goody-goody dialogue. It is not hard dialogue, which Professor Faruqi was laying the foundations about in his book, Christian Ethics, and his writings on Christian-Muslim dialogue, Muslim-Jewish dialogue, and all that. So just having a photo opportunity is not real. We bring a priest and an imam and a Sikh, and gather them together, and everyone talks good to each other. This is not dialogue. This is just goody-goody talk. My religion is good, your religion is good, and we are all good. But dialogue for Professor Faruqi was real dialogue. And that is the way which would, as I said, would lead to religious tolerance and religious understanding, and would be an antidote to Islamophobia. And I think that is what his approach would be, that we need to make dialogue as an antidote to Islamophobia. Another question here is again from admin, I think admin Isa from IIIT.
Yeah, this from me. Some posting it privately to me, so I post it back in a group.
Okay. Yeah. I would like to know about how much Al-Faruqi benefited or influenced by Wilfred Cantwell Smith when he was at McGill. Oh yeah, thanks you for asking that question. They were very, very good friends. And we had an interreligious dialogue conference organized by Professor Sweedler in 1985 at Temple University, where Wilfred Cantwell Smith gave the keynote address. Hans Kung was also there. And the respondent to that, to Wilfred Cantwell Smith, was Professor Ismail al Faruqi. So actually, Professor Wilfred Cantwell Smith owes a lot of his understanding to Professor Faruqi, and Professor Faruqi also has an exchange with him. And in that particular session, that conference, after the keynote address by Wilfred Cantwell Smith, Professor Faruqi complimented Wilfred Cantwell Smith by saying that you are the Al-Biruni of Christianity to Islam. So you can see how he sees. He saw that Wilfred Cantwell Smith had understood Islam very well, because Faruqi and Wilfred Cantwell Smith approach to religion is based that we should, our statements about other religions should be such that when we say that, when we make those statements, they should be affirmed by the adherents of those religions. So this approach is what they shared together. Okay. Aslina Ibrahim. Thank you
question.
very much. Yeah, so I already answered that about Wilfred Kennedy. Somebody saying want to ask face to face. I'll leave it to the organizer for that. And I said yes. Thank you for correcting me that Ziauddin Sardan and Pervez are called the Ijmalis. There's a need for research about critical research of Ijmalis and Al-Faruki. I want to say put Al-Faruki as one person and Ijmali as a group. And that would be a very, very interesting discussion. But unfortunately, we don't have those copies of Afkar publications available that much. What about the translation of Haikal? Yeah, he translated the book of Haikal, Saint Haikal, of Prophet Muhammad to counter the Orientalists. And he has written a long introduction where he counters the Orientalist understanding of the Sirah of Prophet Muhammad and at the Makkah conference, he had discourse on Islamization of social sciences. Social science, Islamization also, because he was the replacement is broadening out of only one area of social sciences to include natural sciences and aesthetics. Actually, the volume which he edited with Abdullah Umar Nasir from the Makkah conference is titled Islamization of Knowledge in Social Sciences and Natural Sciences. Does Faruqi realize the problem? Yeah, he included natural sciences too at the same time. That book is still available here in the library of IIUM and around the world, where he engaged. As I said, he included he invited everyone from various different disciplines to come in and make their contribution. How did Faruqi respond when he was deemed to have stolen the idea? This idea of stealing was made after he passed away. So I think this question cannot be answered by me because he would have to answer it himself. And it was published in the book titled Secularism by Sayyid Naqib al-Attas, which was published in, as I remember, 1993. So he was not around to answer that question. I think there's no question of stealing from one another. We are a ummah and we share together, we learn from each other, and that's what should be the spirit of our ummatic need. He was interested in Ikhwan as-Safa. I think another Muslim professor who became his attention is Ibn Tufail, who we thought was able to transcend Sufism. Yes, he was interested in Ikhwan as-Safa, Ibn Tufail, also Qadi Abdul Jabbar for their rationalism and for their rationalist approach to philosophy, and that's why he wrote two articles on Ikhwan as-Safa, and his approach to Sufism. He criticized not Sufism as a blanket criticism, but the Sufism which he calls a corrupted form of Sufism. Okay. On steward, in his book Islam, Religion, Practice and Culture, there's a section on stewardship. Yes, he was interested in environmental issues. Yes, he, like Professor Syed Hussain Nasr. Actually, there's an article by him on Islam and science, and not environment in particular, in the journal called Zygon, Z-Y-G-O-N. He wrote Islam, the values of Islam and science. It was published somewhere in 1973, if I remember. And he was interested in the question of stewardship in that particular article. While Professor Nasser was the first one to talk about environment much before today's discussion about environment. The third question to everyone. I don't need to read that question, right? All right. Lastly, a meta-religion. Okay, full-fledged Islamization of comparative religion. Asmin Ibrahim asking a question about meta-religion. When he uses the, you're right, I would say you are answering your question yourself, because when he uses the word meta-religion, he is going beyond the comparative approach to religion, which is being employed in the Western universities. You're very right, which is based in Christianity, and which starts with Max Muller and goes on to Wilfred Cantwell Smith. So by using the word meta-religion, for the first time, and very interesting, he is not saying Islam is meta-religion. He says even Islam has this problem, the cultural interpretation of Islam, the nationalistic interpretation of Islam. So meta-religion is rising above religion, basically understanding religion as a human condition, as a human fitrah, and as a human condition which cannot be denied, has been done by the atheists and the secularists and all. So word meta-religion is a challenging term, and he raises it is raising it above the cultural understanding of Islam. And comparative religion, actually, we don't use the word comparative religion at all, because who is comparing whom? It is a very Christian-based usage of comparative religion. That's why the department where we studied and where he taught was Department of Religion. Brother Shahran is graduate of there. It is Department of Religion, and religion not as coined in the Western understanding of colonialist understanding, but religion as a human condition, if I put it simply here. In my reading, Asad Siro, in my reading, Professor Faruqi's discussion of comparative religion mostly attached to Christianity. How his idea of discussion and interreligious studies helps contemporary Buddhist-Muslim interfaith dialogue. Yeah, Brother Asad, yeah, you are engaging in Muslim-Buddhist dialogue. It is his methodology that we study other religions from their sources and not impose our views on them. Let the others speak for themselves, and then we evaluate and judge them, those statements from the Islamic perspective without making a judgment on them. So if I am engaging with the Buddhists, I want to understand Buddhism as understood by the Buddhists, Christians as understood by Christianity. And in that way, I understand my Islam much more deeper and much more deeply than my general understanding of Islam. He actually, there's a journal called Mission. He engaged in a dialogue where he talked about Din al-Fitra, and it is published. And he was Kenneth Craig, the Christian theologian, accused Professor Faruqi of saying that, oh, you are including even Buddha as a prophet. So Professor Faruqi said, why not? Because according to the Islamic perspective, Islamic Quranic perspective, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent his prophets in all places and all languages. So he even makes a statement that maybe the Buddha was an authentic prophet, but his teachings were changed afterwards. So that is his approach to others, that we go to search the original teachings of the other religions and then understand them from their perspective. That would be actually Charles Fletcher has written an article in AJISS on Professor Faruqi's view of Buddhism. Maybe you would like to look at that article in AJISS or AJIS now. Comparing him with the dialogue with Zakir Naik and Al-Faruki. You're putting me in a tough situation, making me critical. Zakir Naik is a popular preacher, in my view. Okay, he claims to be a student of comparative religion. If he really knew study of religion, he would abandon the word comparative religion. So for me, there's no match at all. Faruqi is a very deep scholar of all religions, and Zakir Naik is needed. He is beneficial at a certain level of society. Maybe we'll say the primary school, or a high school. But with Faruqi, you are going to university and advanced study of religion. So there's no comparison at all to be made. So yes, here's the question. Could you explain more why the death of Faruqi happened? Is it because he was becoming a controversial figure of the US? I would say we, the students of Faruqi, we knew Yusuf Ali. In fact, we were shocked to know that he was the murderer. He used to sit with us, spend time with us, eat with us, and go around with us. He had a personal grudge with Professor Ismail al Faruqi, which I cannot discuss here openly for certain issues. And he was taking a personal revenge. And he was an American convert, African-American convert, I'm not making any racial statement here, who had a psychological problem. So, and he had converted in the prison and came out, and he was not of stable mind, as you are right. And he wanted to take revenge on Professor Faruqi for a certain issue. Okay, so it was a murder, and I attended the trial. I and several other brothers and sisters attended the trial, and he himself said that he had certain issues with Professor Faruqi, which why he killed him. Actually, he was, even after killing Professor Al Faruqi, and I remember I went back to US, and he used to come and meet us. He even attended the janaza. And when I saw in the newspaper that he was a murderer, I whirled around like a zombie. Say, oh my God, Brother Yusuf, you did it. Because it was finally revealed that he was the one who was murdered, who was the murderer. And because he was already in the jail, because he had done domestic violence against his wife. Can you explain impact of Al-Faruqi among Gulf countries' educational system? In the past, there was always separated ways. Being Islamic jurisprudence scholar like Al-Ghazali, Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hazm, and other are those adopting with modern knowledge from Ibn Greek, Ibn Khaldun able to be in those two groups. Professor Faruqi was not welcome in the Gulf countries. He went once to give a lecture at Medina, University of Medina, and he came back and he said, I'm not going to be invited anymore. So because of his forthright, because he had seen that the Gulf countries were imitating or borrowing the Western model of universities and education, because these universities in the Gulf countries just started in the 1970s, and which has been proved right. Today, if you look at Qatar, you look at Abu Dhabi or UAE, all of them have branches of what? Of Georgetown University, Yale University, Harvard University. So they are going totally against the program of Islamization of knowledge. Even the Medina University had to change its name to International Islamic University of Medina after 9/11 by the pressure of the United States. So he said he's not going to be invited anymore, and he was upset the way he was, because of his frankness, and his frankness not as in criticism, but frankness in his scholarship of the need of deep scholarship. That we, as I said, we have the data, we produce the theories. What we are doing now is that the others come and take our data and produce the theories. So he was critical of that.
Prof, due to time, can we just take one question? I read to you this question from Brother Izam, very interesting. Yeah. He said, Assalamualaikum, Prof. Would you share one or more of your fondest memories with him, either as a teacher or a friend or a hard taskmaster? I'm inspired. Inspired to show such attitude towards my student further. And he added another, will you also shed some light into his work ethics, how he organizes his day, for example? Okay. This is the last one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll answer in three ways. First, his relation with the students. His relation with his students is that of father and a friend. We would argue, we would he would get angry with us, and he would be so harsh with us. And then he would say, as I said, come, let's go for dinner or for lunch. Let me give you the example. When I met him for the first time, he saw me and he said to me, welcome to United States. Go and buy snowshoes first before you fall down. Because I will have to pay the bill to take you to the hospital, and it is expensive. So that is the approach he has with his students. As a father, and he used to care for us very much, and of our needs, our families, and all our Malaysian brothers and others knew about it. He's not only with Muslim students. Let me tell you his friendship with non-Muslim students. And this is what John Esposito is, his first graduate PhD student. John Esposito has written about it in the journal, and he says he studied. Actually, John Esposito did not want to study Islam, but today he is very famous for his Islamic studies. So when he had finished his PhD dissertation defense, Professor Faruqi took him for dinner. So Esposito writes and says that he asked Professor Ismail al Faruqi the final question, the most important question, that Professor Faruqi, thank you, you are my guide, you're my advisor, and I've defended my PhD dissertation, I have passed, but I want to know, I studied with you for 4 or 5 years, but you never asked me to become a Muslim. You never asked me to become a Muslim. He said, Professor Faruqi responded, if you become a Muslim, Alhamdulillah, well and good. But as your teacher, it is not my duty to ask you to become as a Muslim. You can see how he knew what was his role being played where and how. So today, Esposito is the greatest admirer of Faruqi. If you have attended any lecture, the first thing he says, I dedicate my lecture to Professor Ismail al Faruqi. I dedicate my lecture to Professor Ismail al Faruqi. So that is one. What was the other question you asked, brother?
His work ethic. His work ethic.
Oh, his work ethic. Oh my God, that his work ethic. His work ethic, I'll tell you in two stories, personal. I was his last student assistant, and normally after Fajr I would sleep, and he would call me at after Fajr, depending on the time, and I'd say, Imtiyaz, are you awake? I was asleep. I say, yes, sir, yes, I'm awake. I'm awake. What should I do? Okay. And then, so that was his working. He was a 24 hours work, hard work ethic. I really appreciate it, and I've adopted it in my own life. And another thing, during Ramadan, he used to lecture us for 6 hours per day, 30 days of Ramadan. Before the Ramadan would come, he would say, oh, Ramadan is coming, so my schedule is going to change. We will have 6 hours of lecture. We said, Professor Faruqi, how come 6 hours? How will we survive? He said, what do we have to do in Ramadan during the day? You have nothing to do. So you come to the class, we'll study from 9 to 12, 12 to 1, Zohar break, and continue from 1 to 4. So this was his work ethic, and he implemented hard work. This is what I learned from him, and I adopted him. And research, go and do deep research before making any statement. He used to tell us in the class that don't go to conferences and make statements without a backup material. They will slaughter you, he told us. And I have taken that work ethic from him. So that that was his hard-working work ethic. We can talk about Faruqi forever and do research about him. When I was doing the research, as I say, I'll stop here, that it is a mind, it is a lifetime work which needs to be done. Thank you very much, Brother Shahran.
Thank you so much, Prof. Before we invite Prof to say final words to summarize the talk, we thank all friends for coming today or tonight in our time, inshallah. Prof always keep mentioning about this Christian ethic. I have the copy here with me also, alhamdulillah. Yeah. So for a serious reader, this is a must read for all of us. Very intense, the scholarship. if we can produce such a person, inshallah, in the future, it will be a great achievement. So thank you so much, Prof. We invite you again for 3 minutes or more for final words.
I think I've said everything. If I just summarize that we need more Faruqis, and we need to continue the job he started. Even let Islamization of Knowledge project proceed as it wants to proceed, as the way it goes. But we have to have a ummatic perspective, first thing, which is lacking. Today, we don't have the ummatic consciousness. And he was very much concerned about the state of the ummah. So we have to revive the concept of the ummah. This is one thing I would stress on. And second is complete dedication towards upliftment of the Muslims world, which is in crisis and crisis and crisis. This crisis will not end unless, no matter how many arms you buy, no matter how much money you spend on technology, this will not end unless and until we stand up as representatives of Islam on the world stage, and also as a representative of Islam on the world stage, and stand up without fear of anyone except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and emphasize that we have our worldview, and Islam is a civilization, is a world civilization, and it has a civilizational project, not a national project or a cultural project. And that is the only way. Islam has to be seen as a part of world civilization of the past, present, and future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Indeed, we will, Prof. Aslam and our brothers at IIIT will come and meet you personally, inshallah, to discuss our future project together. This is one of our most important projects. As we said, this critique on the modern discipline. Inshallah, we will launch another grant in next few weeks to invite our scholars to write on their critique on this contemporary discipline, inshallah. We will announce it later. Thank you everyone for coming for today's session. Until we meet again, we close our session with Tasbih, Kifara, and Surah Walas. Subhanallah.